And getting straight into our next session, resourcing a regional AI program. I would like to hand over to Aktana's Michael Denova and Paul Thompson of Novartis. I also encourage the audience to ask questions in the chat that we will do our best to answer during the Q&A. So over to you guys.
Thank you, Dario. First of all, hello to everyone on behalf of Paul and myself. I want to start by thinking about how introducing change, it's a real challenge, and it's one that I'm sure that everyone here has experienced, particularly in a large organization, given a multitude of stakeholders across geographies and across diverse functional backgrounds as well. It becomes really apparent that in order to be successful in building and managing AI at scale, that local teams need to embrace the responsibility they have in driving the initiative. And it's with this in mind that Paul, and the way that he leads the Global Center of Excellence at Novartis, takes in the support that he gets from local teams, in fact, to serve the local teams by shepherding change and by bringing in and sharing best practice and learnings to ensure the long-term success of Novartis's program around next best action. In this session, Paul and I will look to share the approach that we've taken and the learnings that we've attained in standing up and successfully building Novartis's solution around next best action.
Thanks, Michael, and hello, everybody. My name is Paul Thompson. I'm Global Director in Field Force AI Enablement in Novartis, and as Michael says, I'm leading our Next Best Action program in Novartis, which we call Actalia. And I think before I start to talk a little bit around how we address the challenge of scaling our program, and we'll get into quite a lot of the sort of the principles and also the practices that we adopted to do that. I just wanted to give some context. Let's outline the high-level vision and objective as to what we're doing, and maybe tell you a little bit about what we include within our product. And I think, like most of the speakers here today, our challenge is not massively dissimilar. It's all around really creating a more personalized experience for our customers, our HCPs. So a lot of what we have focused in on is leveraging the data. Can we build a much more comprehensive set of both internal and external data that we can then use AI for primarily to really micro segment our customer and start to build the understanding of the different customer segments and the way they network together so that we can generate a customer journey that serves up the right content through the right channel at obviously the right cadence. Where Actalia fits in is how we connect that AI, and indeed that's a mixture of AI and rules-based decisions, into the field force. So how we sort of bridge the interface between the system of intelligence and the human actor. And if you just flip to the next slide, Michael, I think we've focused in on three components in our Actalia product, and you can think of it really, or we think of it as almost a digital assistant for the field force. First piece is about insights, and again, we've heard this a lot today. It's really important to be able to give our field associates a kind of 360-degree view of where we are with our customers, where are we in the customer journey, what's the really important things to know about that account or that customer, because ultimately they're the ones that need to be able to have the dialogue, and they need to sort of use that information day to day. The second is the next best action suggestions, so the provision of kind of the suggestion as to what to do next and the context around that. And then a third element that we've really focused on is workflow and how we can optimize the system of engagement to make sure that what we're providing to the field associates is easy for them to use. It's in one place as much as we can make that happen. And I think also really importantly that it's not all one way. It's not us telling them everything. It also gives them sort of the route to feed back into the system, which is really, really important. So a lot of what we're trying to do with Actalia isn't just deploy a digital tool. It's about helping a field force change their way of working. And if you flip to the next slide, we really need Actalia to be embedded in how the field associates do their planning, what they do when they get up and start to plan their day or their week, what they're doing just ahead of the point where they go into their engagement, be it virtual or face to face, how they log that engagement afterwards and how we capture that information. Our objective is to try and deploy something which enables that whole change to occur. So the change management component for us was really, really important, because this isn't just about training people into using a tool, it's about helping them change the way they're working versus the customer. And our sort of scale up challenge, if you flip to the next slide, is really how, like others, we started out very small. We started out with a pilot in the US, actually, in Germany. How we then scale that up across all of our markets to over 10,000 associates, and how we really try and develop something that sort of has this core built around the franchise global go-to-market strategy, but then has that localization layered on top of it to sort of drive adoption within each of the different markets. We did that by establishing a core product team, which is the lead team that I lead, and managing Actalia as a product. So working very closely in partnership with Aktana and marrying together the skills that we had internally with the skills that they brought to sort of develop this as a product in an agile way. We wish to continue to iterate the features and functionality of it and bring that out. We then established local country business process owners, because we recognized that actually what we were trying to establish here was a sustainable, ongoing tool to support a business process. It isn't just a sort of one-off deployment. And we needed somebody to be able to hold that process live within the countries so that we can build upon that and drive the adoption, really. So the first thing I'll talk about is 7 high-level principles that we adopted to do that. And then Michael will dive much more into the sort of the tactics and the things that we really put in place that underpin those in terms of what we did day to day. Principle number 1 was to be really, really user-centric. So for us, it was really important to understand the differences in how the field force were operating in, say, Japan to Germany, and to make sure that as we localized the product, we really sort of incorporated that understanding and engaged the user. Ultimately, we sort of really strove to sort of bring users into the development process and to sort of give them a voice, really. And that leads into this next point about communication channels. This isn't all one-way communication. This isn't just about creating a marketing campaign for something new and pushing it out with a training program. We wanted to bake the way of working into the existing two-way communication forums that exist in the country, be them team meetings, be them line management meetings. So we get that feedback, because we were wanting to adapt and adopt the rules and the use cases based upon that feedback. So if you flip to the next slide, in order to make that happen, we really needed to get some points of contact. We needed to enable some local champions. And a lot of what we focus on in the core team is actually providing support, recognition, reward to those local champions, because it's the peers of the members of the field force that really drive adoption and really get some of the energy into a larger scale deployment. Acting agile, I mean, we've kind of said it, and I think a number of people have said it, perfection is the enemy of progress in many regards. It's about, or we adopted a phrase of crawl, walk, run. So, do what you can do as quickly as you can do it, crawl. And then from that, you can build the walk. And then from that, you can start to build the run. But a lot of this was about demonstrating, getting those positive quotes back. I never realized that this was, I've seen this suggestion and it led to, and therefore getting momentum built around that way of working. And I think the other point with agility is a lot of we learned this the hard way. A lot of what you want to build is a core kernel 80% set of use cases, because basically that's fairly structural across most of the franchises and most of the markets. But then you want to be able to tailor that the final 20% locally. We actually did learn the hard way, because we saw initially a very strong proliferation of our solutions, because we were driven so much sort of by the local needs, and had to kind of pull that back in and start to manage that sort of at the next level up. And I think Michael will talk a bit about how we did that as well. Then finally, the last couple of pieces, being very, very transparent. I mean, there is a fear of AI. There is a fear of sort of people being told what to do, that you need to break down. So being very open and transparent about trying to explain why the suggestions are there, giving them good context, that's one way. But also being very open and transparent about what the product's trying to do, what's coming next, showing people almost the backlog of changes that are coming, and the backlog of ideas for the new use cases, and being very almost approaching people not with a superior mindset, I guess, to try and get that kind of trust with the field force in the product, and then trust with the senior leadership as well. So the sort of North Star thought process around, we don't necessarily know exactly the roadmap we're going to follow, but we know the sense of direction, and we really need senior management to be endorsing that sense of direction, and to sort of play an active role in sort of driving the adoption of the solution. Again, AI is great, but if you don't get adoption, then it's not worth anything. And the final piece, and something we put quite a lot of focus on actually, was what we call the X factor, or just being a bit different. There's so much going on in large organizations. There's so much change going on that actually trying to appeal to people's sense of fun, trying to appeal to sort of the creativity and the left-hand side of the brain, really differentiates and gets people on board a lot quicker. And it kind of comes with the concept of, we are trying to enable people. We're trying to make them into a superhero. We're giving them the Iron Man jacket, if you like, so that they can go and excel at their role. And you can play on that. And you can, we really tried to get people into the spirit of what we were trying to do, and not just the technology. Even down to gamification. We had some quite good success in China with sort of trying to gamify some of the contents of this. So I think that's some of the high-level principles that we adopted. And Michael, I think if you want to start talking around some of the tactics.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Paul. You've heard Paul talk about the 7 principles that are important for building the success of Actalia. When you look more closely to those principles, you'll in fact see that there are 3 key themes that emerge from that. There is the importance of the end user and the local team, which inevitably is there, in fact, to build what is a globally owned program. There is continual progress, and there is building engagement. And when we look to how those principles cluster around the 3 themes, we can see that there's a certain rotation towards the end user and the local team. And that really underscores the importance of that thematic area and the principles that are associated with that as well. As far as Aktana looking to contribute and nurture these principles along with Novartis, there are 3 areas in which we do that. There is strategic partnership, solution partnership, and then there's training and support. And I'd now like just to spend a little bit of time on each of these 3 and share with you the learnings, focus on the learnings that we've attained from these 3 areas. And starting with strategic partnership and a tool that we refer to as the use case library. Now, the use case library is important because it's a tool that allows us to provide visibility and awareness of the many, many use cases that have been deployed across markets and across brands. And this is particularly important in order to be able to inform and strategic discussions that help to shape where we're taking the program overall. And this is important because with Actalia, what we're looking to do is to drive the global strategy of the brands. And we're also looking to provide elements, core pieces to deliver that. Now, of course, there's always going to be a need for tailoring for each of the markets, but beyond those core elements. But having a tool like this and having that visibility allows us to really inform the discussion around what can be modified such that we are ensuring we have a balanced solution and one that isn't one size fits all. The next learning is around, once we have that visibility, the importance to build strategically from there. And really, the lesson is around the importance of having a dynamic solution. This is in no way a static, build it once and you're done. It really needs to be as dynamic as the environment in which we are operating, with the challenges and the opportunities that each of our brands and each of the markets face. And with that, we really need to be able to adapt, and we need to be able to help the field force cope with these changes. So with that, we have another tool, and that tool is called the use case planner. Now, that tool, in fact, delivers two purposes. The first is exactly what the title would suggest, and the second is also for us to inform and think about how we're looking at impact measurement. And so, starting conceptually with the former, what we're looking to do, really to start with, is to identify the key tactics that have been put in place in order to address the strategic imperatives of a given brand. And we really want to look into, for example, what are the most relevant touch points, and specifically, where is the segmentation focus of these tactics? When we have that information, we can then look to what are the existing use cases that are already in place for that brand, and we can also be thinking about what future enhancements in conjunction with the existing ones would allow for us to really successfully promote behavior, influence behavior, to drive the optimal delivery of that tactic. Once we have that in place, then we're thinking about how do we want to frame the impact measurement of this. And the starting point for us is in identifying what are the metrics that would truly best reflect that intent to positively influence behavior around that tactic in a way that would drive the results we're looking to get. Once we have that, then we need to think about the readiness of the data that's available to measure that and ensure that there's no gaps so that we can truly proceed forward. From there, it's about having the diligence and the governance in place to be tracking that data, to be reviewing it, and to be discussing exactly what changes and opportunities and decisions might ensue from that. Another area in which we look to partner with Novartis is around the local and global discussions we have on a weekly and quarterly basis. And what we found is that by having this regular and rich sense of contact points, it really allows us a couple of things. The first is to really have our finger on the pulse of what is going on and how the performance of the program is going. But it also allows us to take a step back and, with the learnings we have, really assess where things are going and think about where we're taking things in the future. Another area of benefit and learning that we've gotten from having these rich and regular contact points is that it's really helped to foster and build the relationship that we have with Novartis and Aktana at both a local and a global level. And the last thing I would say is that in doing that, it's really, by having these contact points, it's really embedding Actalia within the core ways of working to build the business. And that's very important. The final area of our strategic partnership that I wanted to touch upon is the annual summit that we have on a yearly basis. And now, this is really intended to deliver two things. The first is a governance piece, and that's really about in bringing all the senior strategic stakeholders together to have the governance to set the key priorities for the coming year. But the second element of this, importantly, as Paul was talking about earlier, is that sense of community and injecting fun into that and energizing that community. And in fact, it's not just energizing the community that works on Actalia on a day-to-day basis. Of course, there's that as well, but it's also with regard to the senior global stakeholders. And because what we found is that in renewing their commitment on this annual basis in these discussions, is that the discussions that ensue from there, that when they talk about Actalia across the organization, they're doing it in a way that in fact motivates and engages the whole Novartis organization around the program, which is important. I'd now like to turn to solution partnering. And here there are 5 key things I'd like to touch upon. in terms of learning. The first is around continual enhancement, and specifically that there is a very unique and important opportunity for strategic partners like Aktana working with a customer like Novartis. Is that we can bring a very fresh outside perspective in driving the business around a program like this, based on our broad pharma experience, our benchmarking, as well as our experience in partner integrations. Another area of learning is around agile enhancement, and particularly through sprints, which is something that is increasingly something we're pursuing with Novartis. And what we found in taking this more agile approach, it's drawing in the local Novartis markets in the deployment of enhancements and programs that are being set up, and that in itself, again, it's about bringing them in and really embedding Actalia as a core way of working on the business. Another aspect of agility, though, is the mindset, and the mindset for us is really about doing what we can when we can do it, and as I was saying earlier, not waiting for perfection. The third area of learning is in how we partner with Novartis on their own in-house solutions as they go forward. And an important thing here that we've learned is that, like any relationship, like any partnership, it cannot remain static. It needs to evolve. And trying to resist that is futile. In order for us to be successful, we need to really be thinking about the business first. And what does the business justice? Now, in certain situations, that might be having a full Aktana stack, but increasingly, it's about supporting Novartis in pursuing the in-house solutions that they have, and thinking about what can we do as Aktana to complement that and to ensure success in partnership with them. Similarly, from the management of Actalia, there's a similar thing to consider in that regard, and that increasingly that management of the program is being brought in-house and under Paul's team. And there's, again, a real opportunity for us to help Paul and the team make that transition and to understand how it is that we can make them successful, complement what they're doing, and ultimately redefine our role to ensure that it's one that is of most relevance and value to Novartis. And then the last area under solution part is around the roadmap sharing that we provide. Now, this of itself is very much of an exercise in agility, in that it's not just about sharing the roadmap, but it's about bringing Novartis in, understanding what is most relevant to them on the roadmap, and then digging further for insights as to what is the sweet spot that will really make those areas of interest for them really opportune going forward as we develop those innovations. The last area that to quickly touch upon is training and solution support. And here there are 3 areas of learnings I'd like to share. The first is that when we first stand up a country, of course, we're staying close to the business locally and IT in doing that. But what we've also found is the importance of getting close to the local senior stakeholders. And what's important in that is to share the benefit and the value of what we're doing in their market, such that both strategically and potentially even financially, they're more prepared to be invested in what we're doing, which of itself allows to help secure the long-term viability of the program that we're pursuing in their market. Once a solution is stood up, what's very important in our experience is to have what we call a period of hypercare. And this is a period in which Aktana is staying very close to Novartis to really ensure by holding and working together that we get off to a very strong start. Then from an ongoing perspective, as Paul was talking about earlier, it's really important that there are champions that represent each of the countries and the brands, and that are leading the initiative at their level. Now, from an Aktana perspective, what is important is that we're there for the champions, that we are providing them materials and knowledge such that they can in turn lead and develop and train their own. And then the last area of learning is around self-service training and certification. Now, as I was mentioning a moment ago, Paul increasingly is building up the in-house servicing of the program. Now, for certain members of that team, they will increasingly be looking to work on the solution along with us. Now, to the extent that they're able to do that, we need to be able to be sure that they're trained appropriately, that they're certified in order to do that, which is then followed by a period of shadowing. And then eventually we take a bit of a step back, but we're still there. We're still there to ensure that there is quality reassurance.
Okay, so just to sum up before we take a couple of questions, I think one of the key things that that was really important to us is to make sure that you're designing with the end user in mind. Make sure you're involving the end users, make sure that we're sort of really involving them in the design evolution, and that we're acting in a very transparent and an open way with our actual users, and have fun.
Another area is around anticipating constant change. And here there's a couple of key considerations. The first is around deploying and managing the solution as a dynamic one. And that is really recognizing that there are changes to be had in the life cycle of a brand. There are changes to be seen in, for instance, the environment, as we've seen in the case of COVID in these last 2 years. And finally, there's a change in terms of data. And as it increases and we increasingly can be more personalized and sophisticated with our use cases, that of itself is another thing to anticipate.
Then agility, building off a strategic framework. Start with the core, build upon the core, adapt the core, get things out there as fast as possible. Pace and momentum and demonstrating things actually builds adoption and builds basically impact. And this isn't a one-off solution. So set up a way of working that allows things to evolve from that point.
And then the last consideration for constant change is a very important one with respect to change management. Because there is always going to be new users that come onto the platform with us, there's also going to be a turnover of users. And in both cases, we need to be in a position to create awareness for what Actalia is, how it works, what the role these individuals will have in servicing Actalia, and what good hygiene looks like from their perspective.
And then finally, remain flexible. I think we've been working with Aktana for several years now. Over that period, we've started to do things differently. They've started to do things differently, and situations will constantly change. Play to your strengths and leverage each other's opportunities.
So with that, I'd just like to, first of all, thank Paul for his partnership in presenting today, but I'd also like to thank Paul for his partnership on behalf of Aktana every day, quite honestly. And then on behalf of Paul and myself, I'd like to just thank everyone here for having taken the time to listen to us. Dario?
Thanks a lot, Michael. Really great discussion. And let's move forward to the Q&A. I will show on the screen a very interesting question which we received. So thanks, Paul, Michael, very impressive. Is Actalia have primary CRM as source or any sales data as well for suggestions? So as you see, the question is raised for both of you, Paul and Michael. So who would like to go first?
Yeah, I think it's fairly quick answer. I mean, we have both primary CRM and sales data. So we build, I think, the core off our CRM, but we supplement that with an awful lot of additional other data sources as well.
Thank you, Michael.
I think Paul has covered the point. Actually, yes.
Fantastic. Great. So then thank you, Michael. Thank you, Paul. If the audience has any further questions, please head to the Ask the Expert booth, where our speakers will be for the next 15 minutes available. So, gentlemen, great discussion. We will publish it on our official YouTube channel and looking forward to the next one. Have a nice rest of the day.